have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am the host, Mandie Brice. This is episode number 155, and I am super excited to share another amazing story with you. Today, I chatted with Amiekay Richcrick, who has decided a little after turning 30 that she wanted to go after her dreams and do some traveling. So she left the continent and has some incredible tales to tell. She also shared that she was a dead body on Law & Order, which I think is pretty cool, and has some other pretty interesting stories to share as well. So stay tuned and listen to Amiekay's sweet story. Without further ado, here she is. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. I am today with Amiekay Richcrick, and she has a really fascinating story to tell, so I'm super excited to share it with you. Welcome to the show, Amiekay.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, of course, the show is called Bold Moves, and you wouldn't be on it if you hadn't made some. So why don't you share a little bit about your story and what got you to this point and some of the bold moves you've made?
Okay. So, I guess it was over almost 2 years ago now. I turned 30, and for whatever reason, turning 30 made me kind of look at my life and be like, what am I doing? I guess that usually happens to people either a bit older. I don't know. So at 30, I didn't really have any plans for my 30th birthday, and I was like, this is kind of lame. I was invited to go skydiving with a couple of friends, and I did that. And so when you jump out of a plane, you sort of feel invincible, I guess.
Okay.
Like if you jump on the plane and land. And so when I landed, I was like, I'm going to do what I always wanted to do. I want to travel, and I want to do this, and I want to be a performer, and I want to do all of these things. So I went home, and in a couple of weeks, I reached out to my friend who lives in Europe, and I've known for, like 15 years now. And she's like, yeah, come visit. We'll do, originally I was just going to go to Paris, but she's like, actually, I want to travel that week with you. So we're going to do Venice, Paris, London, Dublin, and Belfast. So we did 5 cities in 2 weeks, which is probably too fast if you aren't with someone who's traveled before. I just remember I was on that plane on the way to Paris, and I just got this feeling. I was like, this is what I want to do. I was so excited. So I did that trip. I went home and I applied for some working holiday visas because I was just at the very oldest age you could possibly be to do them in Australia and New Zealand. And I got both of them. And so over the next couple of months, I started selling all of my clothing, selling all of my furniture, like literally everything I own, except for I have a big suitcase, a carry-on, a book bag with me. And then I shipped a couple of those flat rate boxes to my mom and my sister. So I think there's a total of 9 out there, but they're really tiny. So that's all I own anymore. So I did all of that, and then I got on a plane, and I've been in New Zealand for about a year now.
Okay, cool. So what time is it in New Zealand right now?
It is 11:32 on Saturday morning, March 24th.
All right, so you are in the future.
I am. I live in the future. I tell my friends that all the time. That's my Google Hangouts status is I live in the future, because people will message you and be like, happy Friday, and I'm like, actually, it's Saturday.
My Friday was great, thank you.
Yeah.
I noticed that because this, for those of you listening, you're not aware, but I had the interview with Amiekay scheduled previously, and for me, it was going to be a Friday afternoon, and she said, I planned something for my Saturday morning, and I didn't even think about it, and then later I was like, I wonder if she is in Australia or New Zealand or something, because I've interviewed a couple people who are that far away and have that circumstance. But yeah, so very cool. So what are you doing while you're over there?
So I've just been traveling, and it took me a while, but I did find a job. So I quit my job in news. That was another big thing. I had done 8 years. I had a career in news. I had, a professional track I was on, and I quit it. But partially because I wanted to travel, partially because it wasn't as fulfilling as it was when I started.
Okay.
So I came here, I got offered a news job and I turned it down. So I ended up being, I'm an onboarding specialist at a software company here. So I help them with some customer service stuff, but I also move data between systems, and I process contracts and lots of really exciting stuff compared to television news.
Okay. So what were you doing in the news field before?
I was a TV news producer, so the elevator speech on that is basically I wrote all of the copy the anchors read.
Mm-hmm.
So if a reporter was reading it, they wrote their own copy, but I wrote what the anchors read and I decided what order it went in. And I tried to tell a coherent story, and I had to hit commercials at a certain time and all of that stuff for ratings. So.
Okay, fantastic. And so you are more fulfilled in your current job, or are you happy to have a job while you are traveling?
It's really just a job for traveling. My coworkers are amazing, but it's not creative enough for me, so I'm not going to stay there with them. They had offered to sponsor me to keep me in New Zealand, which is really lovely, and they're lovely people. But I need to go somewhere else. New Zealand's currency does not pay my American bills. We'll put it that way.
Okay, got it. How long have you been traveling then?
It's only just been a year, and it's been mostly New Zealand and Australia. So.
Okay, cool. Do you have an idea where you think you're heading next?
Yeah, so I had a lot of plans, and they've all been thrown out the window. I was originally going to go to Australia and do my working holiday there for a couple months. I also got offered a cruise ship job, but this amazing opportunity. This amazing opportunity in Florida actually fell into my lap. So I'm actually moving to Florida for at least a couple of years. So I'm sort of having to do what I just did again, which is sort of frustrating, but it's also cool because it's digital marketing and social media, and that's really what I've wanted to do. That's what I tried to do when I got here. That's kind of what I do with my own personal life. So,
okay,
yeah.
So when do you move?
My last day in New Zealand is April 17th. I'm in Australia for a day because I had to do a layover there because I'm flying home on points because I don't have any money left. And and then I fly from Sydney to Florida on the 19th. So I get the 19th twice, essentially.
Ah, okay. So what are you going to do with that extra day? I feel like you almost won the lottery in time-wise. You're like, I'm going to be on a plane.
Yep. Yeah. On the way here, I lost a day. So I think I lost May 6th. Okay. It was like May 5th when we left, and it was May 7th when I landed. And it was only like a 16-hour flight. So on the way back, it's just an extended April 19th.
Okay, fair enough. That's funny. Those are right around my siblings' birthdays. My sister's May 7th and my brother's April 20th. So you're like flying on their schedules.
Oh, yeah. Well, my birthday's May 10th. So, yeah, that was why I left when I did, because I was like, I'm going to be in another country, but when I turned it turned 31. So, yeah.
Very cool. So where are you going to be working for this amazing opportunity?
It's for a company. You guys will have never heard of it. It's a recruitment firm in Florida. It's in Delray Beach.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be good.
Awesome. So it just fell in your lap. You weren't looking to come home or anything, and you can't pass it up.
Yeah. Well, so I actually interviewed for this position a year ago. Before I was like, I'm just going to see if there's anything outside of news in the States that I can do. And then I can travel, with a budget. And so I didn't get the job then, and we've just been talking. And so I emailed him and I was like, hey, I'm about to leave New Zealand and blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, if you're ever in Florida, let's meet up. And then and I was like, okay, cool. I'll talk to you then. And the next day he's like, actually, the girl just sent in her resignation. She's got offered another job. So let's chat. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I'm really sad to not do Australia, but it'll still be there in a year. I mean, it really comes down to it's a job that I want, and it'll help me pay off my debt because I've gotten into more debt in New Zealand because I'm actually I just read a blog post about this. I'm pretty underpaid for what I'm doing.
Okay.
And so at the end of my pay period, I'm usually in the negative for a couple days. And so, yeah, that's been a real struggle. I was told when I did this, it was like, oh, you can travel with debt, and you absolutely can. I just wouldn't come to New Zealand. New Zealand is so expensive. And I think if I had done Australia or I had done Asia or I had done literally anywhere else, I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in.
Okay.
But I don't regret it. So
that was going to be my next question. What about New Zealand then makes it so expensive?
Well, it's kind of as far away from anything as you can possibly get.
Okay.
It's a small island, so it's the size of the best way I can describe New Zealand is it is the size of California with the population of LA.
Okay.
So there's not that many people, and the climate only allows for so much. So food itself, so your necessities are really expensive. Clothing is really expensive.
So like Hawaii, where you have to have everything shipped to you. So like a gallon of milk is $10 and
not quite that bad. I don't think it's quite as bad as Hawaii, but food is expensive, clothing's expensive, shoes are expensive. I mean, it's good. I think it's a good place to visit, but if you're going to come here, unless you live in one of the smaller towns, and by smaller towns, I mean very small. It's just, I spent 50 NZ a week on groceries for just me, so that's a lot. I would spend 50 USD every 2 or 3 weeks in the States, and I'm actually eating, my meals at the moment consist of rice and split peas.
Oh, wow.
Like dried split peas, and then I'll sometimes splurge and get frozen vegetables. So
okay. I can't imagine. I mean, I live in LA though, so I can't imagine spending $50 every 2 or 3 weeks on food.
Okay.
I joke with my parents that I think food outside of rent is my husband and my biggest expense, because we just kind of believe in investing in that, I guess. But it's of course about choices. I'm sure we could make it work if we were eating rice and split beans.
I mean, I just have no choice. It's just, I did when I first got here, and the reason I'm in debt, because I was like, oh, I have a job now, I can afford things. So I started, like, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't, I guess meat might be a little less expensive. I personally don't know. So I was buying like the vegan meat and stuff like that. Fake meat, because it's obviously not meat. And that was really expensive. So that was quite a lot. That was $9 for four servings, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I can get similar stuff in the States for a lot less than that. Plus transferring money, like I have to transfer money home every paycheck to pay my bills. And so then you lose money on the exchange rate, and then you lose money because they take a transfer fee. So
got it.
But it's a really lovely country, and I've had a really lovely experience.
That's awesome. Have you had the opportunity to, being on a limited budget, still explore a lot? Cool. Because one of my favorite things when I travel is actually to go eat.
Yes, so I have done that. So what I should say, my lunches are rice and beans, and then for dinner, I don't usually eat dinner. But if I eat dinner, it's usually only because I've gone out to eat and I wanted to try the food. I have traveled. I've made some really lovely friends here that took me on trips with them. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason I'm in debt is because I was like, I'm not in New Zealand to sit in Wellington for a year. Right. And for a while I was paying it off, but it got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore.
Sure. Okay. So I'm curious, what is your purpose, if you know?
Oh, so I actually didn't know that I didn't know this. I always knew it, but I was afraid of it until a couple weeks ago. I always thought my purpose was probably to write, maybe like in the back of my mind, I thought maybe it was to write, maybe it was to do this, maybe it was to do that. And then I got the chance, and I can't say too much about it. I got the chance to be an extra on a set here.
Okay.
And I just threw myself into it, and I got a lot of compliments from the director and people on set, and they're like, maybe you should do this for a living. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be on stage or on set, but I always thought I was too fat, or I was too this, or I didn't have enough money and things like that. So I don't know, but I walked into the restaurant with my friends afterwards, and they were like, you're glowing. And I was like, I know. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I think my purpose is to perform. I just got to figure out how to do it. That's another reason I'm taking the job in Florida, because I think I need to reassess. Like, I always wanted to travel, and I've gotten to do that.
Yeah.
And I want to keep traveling. But I think, my life just sort of changed in the past couple of months, and my goals are totally different than they were when I left. And I think that's part of life, is being to readjust and reevaluate and pivot as needed.
Absolutely. Even when I ask that question, usually what people's purposes are, I often will say like right now, or just because for many people it does change and frequently. And I think it's just cool to be aware of it. I wonder if we would have had our original time if you would have had different answers, since you said you just figured this out.
Yeah, no, it was literally like, I think it wouldn't have been the same, because I hadn't been on, it was literally like, I was at work one day, and then I got the call, they're like, hey, can you be on set tomorrow? And I was like, okay, sure. Like, I didn't audition or anything. And so, yeah, and it's just, I do community theater. I did community theater in the States, but I never thought of doing it professionally. And it's probably because I love film a little bit more than theater. Don't tell my theater friends, but so yeah, we'll see what happens to me after I get back. Maybe I'll bug out after a couple months and be like, I want to keep traveling, and I'll leave again. Who knows?
Yeah, or maybe you'll end up in LA doing more background acting.
Yeah, I've thought about it.
Doing more. Yeah, very cool. I'm curious what you liked about it. I've done a little bit of it, and it was sort of fun, but I don't think I was glowing at the end of those long days walking back and forth.
Well, so I did it as a kid, so it's something very familiar to me. Like I was a dead body on Law and Order as a teenager.
Sweet.
And if you've seen 13 Going on 30, there's a scene on the train, and she's like, and Jennifer Garner is upset because she's, a 13-year-old and a 30-year-old body, and she's seeing these teenagers that are talking. I'm the teenager with the can in her hand, with pigtails. So I've done some stuff like that. I just really like the idea of making others happy, but I also like transporting myself somewhere else. And I got the opportunity to do that on that set. And it was just a reminder of something of a dream that I had as a teenager that I never pursued. And it was good. I really got into it, and the fact that I got noticed by other people. Because, most when you're a background extra, you don't really have to act unless you want to. And if you want to, you can really, like, people are like, Amiekay, you can calm down. This isn't actual life. I'm like, I'm just in it. I'm good. I'm good. So I just really like that. I don't know. It's kind of an escape, I guess, for me personally. But I do like, I don't know. There's something about movies and theater that I think really helps everyone sort of understand life better, I guess.
Yeah.
And I find that as very fulfilling. And I find that for me personally, like, I don't know, I was a very sheltered child, so I learned a lot of my social cues from television shows. So.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Pennsylvania.
Okay. Very cool.
A small town probably no one's heard of named New York, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right.
Near Lancaster and Hershey. People have heard of those.
Yeah. Is it cold there?
Oh, yes. It gets cold there 6 months out of the year. Quite regularly.
That's what it's like where I'm from as well.
Really?
Yeah. I'm from Milwaukee. So.
Oh, Milwaukee gets colder, I think.
It's colder than everywhere, I think. Not really, but it feels like it sometimes. I'm curious, what is the scariest thing you've ever done?
Oh, I've done so many scary things. I mean, I think the obvious answer would be jumping out of a plane, but to be honest, I was the only time I was scared because I was with 5 people and I volunteered to go first.
Mhm.
So I don't think I was that scared. It was just the moment you look down right before you jump is scary, but that's it. I think the scariest thing I did was probably moving to New Zealand.
Yeah.
I think I had a couple of, it was very emotional. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of, what am I doing? There was a lot of, I don't know, just nerves. And yeah, definitely, at 30, almost 31, saying goodbye to everything that I knew and everything I had built.
Absolutely. That seems like a reasonable choice to me. It's funny because I've been skydiving a couple times too. And the first time I knew quite a bit in advance because my mom wanted to do it for her 40th birthday. And so she wanted me to come with her. So we knew probably a couple weeks or a month, and I agreed to it and I wasn't nervous. And then I was like, well, maybe the week before I'll be nervous. And I wasn't. And I'm like, maybe like the day before, night before, I'll be nervous. And I wasn't. I'm like, I bet when I get in the plane, I will. I bet like this. And I kept not. And even when we did like flips out of the door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I wasn't even scared then. And for me, I felt like it was really peaceful, especially once the chute was open, because you could just see forever and it was so quiet. And the scariest part of the whole thing was after we were already on the ground, the chute was still like spread out and a gust of wind came and I had to like take a couple steps back. That was the scariest part. I had already like been standing on the ground for a couple seconds. So I can definitely see how, while many people would be terrified of that it would also possibly not be the scariest thing in someone's experiences.
For sure. I don't even have any of those sorts of stories. Mine went perfectly fine. I mean, I think I skidded a little bit when I landed, but
yeah.
Wow.
So I'm curious, like you said, it was emotional and there was crying and you're thinking, what am I doing? When you were in that position and you were scared, how did you push past that fear? And if, I guess, someone's listening, thinking about doing something scary like that, what advice would you give to them to make maybe a tough decision that's scary?
So what I kind of had no choice but to push past it. And I put myself in that situation on purpose. If I hadn't had flights booked, if I hadn't quit my job, if my furniture wasn't being taken, I probably would have just stayed because it's easy. That was the easy choice. But I put myself in the position where I was in a community theater show. And so the day after my last show, I went, like, I had one day to get out of my apartment. That was all I had. So if I had given myself like a week or two, I think it would have been harder. It was just, my advice would be make the decision and then put yourself in a situation you have to follow through on it. That's sort of the position I am in here because as much as I had said, I'm not getting paid and all my economical situations isn't so great. I was in a position where I kind of wanted to stay because I was like, oh, maybe this acting thing's going to work out here. Yeah. But I had to put myself once I had made the decision, I bought my flights and have started like getting rid of my stuff again and all of that, because I know if I don't do it, if I didn't do it, I would probably get comfortable, and I don't want to stay here. I don't want to stay in New Zealand. If I had the funds, I would keep traveling. But I do want to pursue acting, and that's easier for me to do in the States because in New Zealand, they generally either want people with English accents or Kiwi accents. Okay. Sometimes they want American accents, but usually they fly the American actors over. So, and it's just, I couldn't stay and just be an actress. I'd have to have another job, and that job would have to sponsor me. And I'd already sort of told my job no. But anyway, I have put myself in a position where I had to follow through on this decision to leave. And it was scary. I had friends that I talked to. I had a couple of people come over while I was packing, and they like reaffirmed why I was doing this. Like, I really needed that. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe I'll go back and ask for my job. And they're like, Amiekay, you don't want to stay here. Like I had one friend say, the moment you made this decision, your entire demeanor changed. She was like, you went from being miserable and unhappy to really excited. And that was really good to hear. So yeah, other people and position where you have to do what you set out to do.
Those are great tips, and it sounds like you have quickly made a good group of friends in New Zealand that is attentive and aware of you, because it sounds like they're making really important observations on your demeanor and everything.
Well, that was in regards to my move from Florida, my original move from Florida to New Zealand. But I do have friends here that I've talked to them. I was like, oh, why am I leaving? They're like, Amiekay, you really didn't like winter in Wellington. Like Wellington's a great city. Winter sucks. So yeah, I had similar friends say, you've been talking about leaving for a while. They've like, you did talk about Australia, and it's sad that you're not going to get to do that, but
sure,
this is what you wanted. Like, this is a career that you're going to love. It puts you in a position that you can still do some acting in Florida. There's a huge theater scene down there and things like that. So
sure, I'm sure, and I'm guessing there's a lot of opportunities with Disney World and the cruise circuit and stuff as well with acting.
Yeah, there's that. But I would have to quit the job that I have to do that, because those are Disney's a good 3 hours from where I will be.
Right.
And cruises do like 6-month contracts, and you have to be on the boat. So those opportunities are there. So maybe after I pay off my debt, I'll do that.
Right.
There's also a small film scene, but it's mostly theater, which is good. So.
Awesome. So I thought that your advice was great on how to push past fear. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you've learned in your travels or otherwise that maybe something you wish that you had learned sooner, or something, just any sort of general advice that you could pass along to our listeners.
Sure. I think the biggest one for me was, wherever you go, there you are, that quote.
Okay.
'Cause I had so when you travel solo and sure, I did know one girl here, but she worked a different schedule, so I never really saw her. I saw her a good amount, but for the most part, I had a lot of time on my hands to myself, where I had to either explore on my own or I was alone with my thoughts. So after I ran out of things to explore, I was alone with my own thoughts. And lots of things came up that I thought I had dealt with that I had not dealt with. So you can't outrun your problems. They're going to be there. But sometimes a change of scenery will help.
Okay.
I don't want to say run away from them, but I think had I not come to New Zealand, I would have just kept ignoring those things and ignoring some of it's the cliche stuff like heartbreak and being abandoned by people that I loved or things like that. But at the same time, some of it was less cliche things like, okay, I like being responsible. I like being able to pay my bills. A lot of people that travel don't pay their bills, like dirty little secret. They defer their loans, or either they have someone paid off their loans for them, or they didn't have any, or it's deferred. So when people tell you you can travel with debt, you can travel with debt. You're just not going to be responsible about it. So I realized that I enjoy being responsible. I take pride in meeting my obligations. So it was just a mix of things that I learned to embrace about myself and things that I had to let go of that I didn't know I was holding on to. So I would definitely be prepared for that if you go on an extended solo trip.
Okay.
Because it takes a while to meet people. And after the allure of the new location wears off, you're sort of there. Life continues. Like moving abroad isn't all sunshines and rainbows. It's you have to get a job, and you'll be in the office, and it'll be similar to your life back home, unless you're lucky enough to get a remote job, I guess. Yeah, I think that's my biggest thing of advice. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me. Also, you'll be surprised how much you can push yourself. Like, I've met I always considered myself shy.
Okay.
But I sort of forced myself to go out and meet people, and I've made a lot of what I consider lifelong friends, even though I won't be in the same country as them. Some of them will stay. Some of them are staying here. Some of them go on somewhere else after this. So
cool. What tips would you give for someone moving to a completely new place on how to make friends? Because I feel like my husband and I moved to Northern California exactly 3 years ago today, and then down to LA in September. And making friends is so much easier, like when you're in college and everyone has to live on the same floor. And
absolutely.
So what tips would you give in a different country, or even, I suppose moving to a new city or a new state?
I actually think it's easier to find new friends in a new country because
Okay.
The expats find each other. So what I did, and I'll tell you that I have two different stories. I'll start with the New Zealand one because New Zealand's a little bit happier.
Okay.
So when I came to New Zealand, I found people by Facebook groups and by the app Meetup.
Okay.
So there's a lot of travel-oriented Facebook groups, specifically for women. There's one called Girls Love Travel, which I think just about every woman is on these days. And then there's like the Solo Female Traveler Network. There's Digital Nomads. So I got on there, and I met a lot of great people, specifically the Girls Love Travel, but the other groups are there as well. So that made my life a lot easier because then sometimes they'll host meetups in those groups,
Sure.
through those groups in those locations. And that's what I sort of mean, like, because there's a lot of people that come to New Zealand on like a working holiday or that immigrate here because it's such a small country. So it was sort of easy to find a lot of other people that were looking for friends. The Meetup app was helpful. That's a little bit more, I met a lot more locals that way. And
Okay.
when they sort of know you're passing through the country, it's harder to sometimes form relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my experience in New Zealand. That's really what did it for me. You could also, so in Florida, what I did there is I did the meet. I had a friend of a friend connect me with someone who was in the city. And then I went on a Meetup app, and I went and I found like the newbies group, because there's always a newbies group. And so I went and I met them there. I met people through that. I also met people through theater. So I suggest volunteering or, joining a club or an organization for something that you really love. Something I'm thinking about doing when I go back is volunteering. There's a sea turtle rescue in the county I'm going to be in. So I was like, I always wanted to volunteer there and I didn't do it, and I was sad. So I'm going to hopefully do that. So yeah, I think it's finding people with similar interests is good. So make use of the resources at your disposal. So the internet, social media, and then clubs and organizations that actually meet, because a lot of groups don't always meet up in person, and that's not so great.
Those are great recommendations. So still on the recommendation theme, do you have any books that you recommend? I imagine on these long plane rides you're reading, or if you ever don't have a meetup to attend and are just at home relaxing, it might be something you do. So I'm wondering if you have, it could be any kind of book, but any book recommendations you'd like to share.
Sure. So I have two in particular that I've read in the past year that have started out to me. One is a self-help book. One is sort of a memoir. The memoir is called What I Was Doing While You Were Breathing by Kristen Newman. Okay. She is a comedy writer, but during her 20s and 30s, she spent a lot of her time off traveling. And so it's her stories about how she sort of learned her life lessons through traveling. So obviously that speaks to me. And I recommend it for any like female that's thinking about doing a solo adventures. Okay. And then the other one, which has become like one of my personal favorite books, is called How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's a self-help book, but it's all about how your mind works and how, we aren't always our thoughts. So yes, like there was for example, the book helped me take notice of some of my behavior patterns that I learned growing up in a single parent household and have these opinions of like, I'm always having to fight for my mom's love. It's helped me like sort of, reverse those things and sort of change my thought patterns. There's a meditation you can do at the end, which was also really helpful for me. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really good book for anyone looking to sort of grow as a person.
Very cool. Yeah, I think actually personal development and self-help books are very popular recommendations on this podcast because the podcast itself is sort of in that space, and I'm passionate about personal development and, becoming better, more self-aware, and just figuring out any way that you can get to your goals quicker. So it definitely, I think actually Joe Dispenza his books have been recommended. Not sure if the same one or not, but yeah, so I'll have to check that out because it sounds pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I will say self-help is, personal development is, I'd started doing that, I had started some online courses and meditations and things like that. And had I not done that a year and a half ago, I would have never actually had the courage to leave. So I think anything that you can do to help center you and ground you and sort of understand yourself and what's going on around you is great. And I haven't actually read anything else by Joe Dispenza, but I've been recommended a couple other ones, but that's the one that was recommended to me first. So
I love it. So you mentioned that your upcoming job is going to be in digital marketing and social media, and you said that that's kind of what you do. And you also mentioned that you just wrote a blog post. So I am curious, where can we find you online, social media, website, and all of that? Let's hear it. And of course, it'll be in the show notes along with your book recommendations, but if anyone's listening, they can hear it as well.
Sure. So my blog sort of has a link to everything, so I'll start with that. My blog is amiekaysadventure.com. I post once a week at the moment, just sort of mostly about my adventures in New Zealand, but occasionally, like the last one when I announced that I was coming home, it was sort of I felt the need to defend my decision and what I was doing. So there's that. I'm also at Amiekay's Adventure on Instagram and on Facebook. Okay. On Twitter and Snapchat, it's different because Amiekay's Adventure is too long. So okay. It's Amiekay R because my last initial is R. So.
Okay, cool. And are you going to keep that the same even though your adventure is taking you less potentially adventurous, or are you going to continue to have adventures in Florida and keep the same names?
I'm definitely keeping all of it. I plan on continuing to travel, and so because Florida's a huge state, and even if I just travel Florida, but I was thinking I'm super close to the Bahamas and the Caribbean, so I definitely plan on taking weekend trips. I mean, Disney's there. Disney's the obvious one. But there's so much to see and do that I didn't get to see because I had lived there for a few years previously, that I plan on doing. Because when I left, I was like, I didn't do any of this stuff. Why did I not do this? I was like, oh, I'll have to come back. And of course, I thought I'd come back eventually to visit my friends that live there. But so it's kind of cool that I get to do, I don't know, there's like a crystal river I want to do. I want to go swim with the manatees. I haven't seen the Panhandle at all, so there's a bunch of stuff that I'll be writing about for sure.
So you have a new Florida bucket list to tackle.
For sure. I have a U.S. bucket list. The states are so big.
Yeah.
Even I haven't been to the Grand Canyon, so there's a lot of oversights I did before leaving for New Zealand that I can check off while I'm here.
There you go. Perfect. I love it. And maybe your Kiwi friends will like to see what's going on over in the United States if they haven't been.
Yeah, no, a lot of them are there like, make sure you have an extra room for us because we want to come visit. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I always want visitors. I always want visitors. I always wanted an excuse to go explore things. But now I can do it on my own. I've learned that I can do it on my own. So
there you go. It's funny because when you said that it could be harder to make friends with locals when they know that you're just potentially passing through the country, I was thinking, don't these people want a place to stay when they go somewhere else? Like, I love to make friends with people who travel because I kind of, anytime I'm going somewhere, I'm like, all right, do I have a friend in this city?
For sure. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people get exhausted. And I can understand because New Zealand's such a lot of people come here and leave, or a lot of people come here temporarily. So I think a lot of people just get exhausted. I have one really good friend who sort of explained it to me. She was like, I just get exhausted making friends with people, and then they leave, and then I'm back at square one, and I have to find someone. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Especially people that are in their 20s and 30s. Older people, I think it's like they're settled, so they have their own group of friends that live here. so they'll take in new friends that are passing through. So
sure, that makes sense. Okay, so I have my last question, and I think it's interesting, especially given your recent experience with your background acting, but I love to ask the question, if 8-year-old Amiekay had a crystal ball and could look into it and see everything between when you were 8 all the way up to Amiekay today, and of course you know that in a couple weeks you're moving back to the United States, to Florida for this dream job, and the foreseeable future you can kind of predict on a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little Amiekay be to see where you are now?
oh, I think she'd cry.
In a good way or a bad?
In a good way. I don't think it would be 11.
Like, it
because
would be like a 1 or
I don't think it would be 11 because little Amiekay would be like, why didn't you pursue acting? Like, I don't understand. Like, 8-year-old Amiekay wouldn't understand the financial restraints of being an adult. But I think it would be a good 9.
Okay.
I think it would be a good 9.
All right. Well, maybe in a couple of years, we'll see if you're back into the acting scene. And if you've pursued that, maybe you can let me know when you're at 11.
Yeah, no, I will. I mean, 9's really good. Like, as a little kid, so I think I'm not upset at moving back to Florida too much because as a kid, the moment I set foot in Florida, I always wanted to live there. So it was a really hard decision for me to actually leave Florida the first time.
Yeah.
I'm the girl who drew. I would walk into teachers' classrooms and during extracurriculars before I left, I would draw them a palm tree because that's always where I wanted to live. So 9-year-old Amiekay or 8-year-old Amiekay would be happy that I'm in Florida. She would just be sad about the acting thing.
That's fair.
But I'm going to hopefully change that.
I love it. Yeah, but like I said, my husband and I have been in California for 3 years, and I can see palm trees out my window right now. And there has not been a day that I haven't been like, this is pretty cool. Like, I live by the palm trees now, or I'll see the mountains here, and I'll be like, yeah, I live in a cool place that people want to come for vacation. It's not a bad deal.
You live, I think it's the same in California. You live where other people vacation. Like, that is
exactly
amazing. It's like, oh, if people come visit you, you're like, oh, yeah, I have 70 degrees and sunny all year round.
Right?
So,
yeah. And the same thing, too, like when we go other places, like my husband just got back from New Orleans, which I love New Orleans, but it's just kind of like, well, it's not like when we would go back to Milwaukee, especially during the winter, and be like, oh, we got to go back to Milwaukee now. It's going to be cold and gray for 2 more months or whatever. It's like, oh, sweet, we're going back to LA. Like, looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, that was an adjustment for me because I went to Australia and it was warm and sunny, and then and it was in the middle of winter here in Wellington. So then I came and I was like, oh, I forgot how much of this sucks.
See, but you gotta not take the good days for granted then.
for sure, yeah. But it's good. I do love Wellington. It's grown on me. It's a little windy, but
awesome.
Good.
Well, you only have a couple more weeks of the wind, so try to soak it up and enjoy it while you can before you move back to Florida. And thank you so much for your time that you've spent, and what you're doing is super exciting. So I'm sure a lot of listeners will be really interested to follow your adventures and see where you end up heading.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, so I don't think that being the dead body on Law & Order was the highlight of her life, but I still think that's super cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed listening to her tales of travel, and if you want to keep up with her and see what her adventures are coming forward, or going back and, looking at the archives as well, make sure you can go to the show notes at www.mandiem.com/episode 155. That's where you will find all of her links and information. And yeah, I would hope that since I'm telling you what to do, that you also subscribe so that you get her Fearless Fridays challenge this coming up Friday. Stay tuned for that. Also, make sure that you share this with people because I want to inspire as many people as possible. So if you know anyone who has a little bit of wanderlust that you might want to encourage to go traveling, please share this with them because they might find some information from Amy interesting or useful, or maybe even will want to get in touch with her about some travel tips that are always useful for anybody who is going on a trip. All right, I love hearing your stories, so make sure you go to www.mandiem.com/guest and fill out the form if you have made some bold moves, or you can use that to nominate someone. You just have to make sure it's somebody that you can actually get me in touch with, because if you nominate somebody who we have no way of getting in contact with that you know has made bold moves, that is not as helpful as you may think. But yes, please sign up to be a guest or share this with someone who you think would be a great guest, because I would love to share more fantastic stories. All right, this coming Friday, I have a challenge from Amiekay that I think you're going to love. I'm already excited to do it, so I wouldn't be surprised if you are too. Make sure that you leave a review on iTunes. That's a great way, in addition to the sharing, to help get the message to more ears, which I really appreciate. And as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.